We have charged Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke with first-degree murder in the connection of the shooting death of Laquan McDonald. Laquan McDonald was 17 years old when he was shot and killed by the defendant on October 20th, 2014 at approximately 9:47 p.m. on the city's southwest side.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Hard Line. I'm Rick Blackwell, in for Ed Berliner. A white police officer who shot and killed a black teenager in Chicago last year, charged with first-degree murder Tuesday. Yesterday marked the 400th day after 17-year-old Laquan McDonald was shot by Officer Jason Van Dyke. Yesterday also marked the first time a Chicago police officer has been brought up on murder charges in decades. Police dash camera footage of the shooting was released on a judge's order. Now, before we show that video, please be warned that it is graphic in nature. You can see McDonald walking down the street. There is a knife in his right hand. Police dispatchers, after there were any patrols in the area, with a taser. Officer Van Dyke's car responded that they were en route to the scene, but they did not say whether or not they had a taser. As the first shot strikes McDonald, he falls to the ground. The dash cam turns and the officers are out of frame. What follows is corroborated by eyewitness accounts and police statements. Officer Van Dyke continued to fire into McDonald's body, expending every one of his 16 bullets. Chicago Mayor Emmanuel said that Officer Van Dyke violated the city's trust.
We hold our police officers to a high standard. And obviously, in this case, Jason Van Dyke violated both the standards of professionalism that comes with being a police officer, but also basic moral standards that bind our community together.
The officer may have pulled the trigger, but do bigger issues exist in the Windy City? And is Chicago just another Ferguson, Missouri, but on a much larger scale? Well, welcome to the program, former Illinois Congressman Michael Patrick Flanagan, joined by columnist Eric Zorn, who wrote an eye-opening column on the shooting in the Chicago Tribune. Welcome to you both.
Hi.
Lot to get into on this, Congressman. Why did it take a year and 2 months for the video to be released?
Well, because a judge had to order the video to be released, or it would have never been released. And it wasn't released at the time, of course, because Rahm Emanuel was in a re-election. And that's what's kind of lost in all the discussion of this, is that it was about getting him re-elected, and this couldn't be talked about then in any useful, forceful way. What's also interesting is that the policeman is indicted the day before the video is supposed to be released, and controlling the organs of prosecution and enforcement by Democrats, particularly Chicago Democrats, is a hallmark of their ability to hold on to power.
Well, Eric, you talk about this delay in your column. Do you believe it was politics?
Well, certainly politics was part of it. You know, the congressman is right that there was the mayor's reelection was at stake, but that was the spring that election was held, and we're now in November. So there was also some longer-term political considerations going on here. I believe that the city really wanted to hang on to this video as long as they possibly could, maybe even forever. They settled with the family. One of the interesting things about this case is that even without a lawsuit being filed, they paid the family of Laquan McDonald $5 million to go away, in a sense. So there was, I think, a concerted effort at the top to try to keep this from ever becoming public.
Well, Congressman, let's talk about that Chicago's mayor's race. Take it a little bit step further. If the video is released in a timely fashion, do you believe it hurts Mayor Emmanuel's re-election chances?
Well, if you remember that election, it was very close. Chicago left the usual primary general election concept a few cycles ago and has an open primary where everyone is required to come back together. This is to make sure that the Republican doesn't get a free bite at the apple in a general election context. So it was two heavily favored Democrats, and Mayor Emmanuel did not get a clear majority in what it's now known as the preliminary election as opposed to the primary. And yes, that was the spring, but it's actually the late winter, and it was within 90 days of that election was this event last November. So I absolutely believe that Rahm Emanuel didn't want anything to make his chances even more worse. I mean, Chicago Democrats are spectacular vote counters. Emanuel knew it would be close. This would have made it hard.
Well, if I can jump in, I agree that you can chalk up half of the delay, perhaps, to electoral politics, but nothing really accounts for the months and months that have gone by since the mayor was reelected. That we have not seen this video. They had to pry it out of the city's hands. And it is as bad.
I agree with you, but once he got it suppressed, why ever bring it out? And I think that goes to your point, is that the city would have never brought it out if they could get away with not doing it.
All right, let's talk about the future, because there were protests last night. There were some incidents of people being pushed by police pushing back. But I want to ask both of you, in the city of Chicago right now, where is the mood? We talked about, could this be another Ferguson, Missouri? Where do you think right now? What is the atmosphere like right now in Chicago?
Well, I don't think that we're going to see the kinds of destructive riots that we saw in Ferguson. And one reason is because the officer has been charged. And there is a sense that justice has been done. Justice was delayed, but it wasn't denied. So I think the level of fury here is not what you saw in Ferguson. And there's the holiday weekend to consider when passions are going to cool. The mayor has gotten some of the black clergy involved and tried to get them to preemptively ask people to remain calm. And of course, yes, there have been some protests, and there will continue to be some protests, but so far nothing violent.
Congressman Flanagan, curious about your feelings too. More protests planned for tonight.
Well, there's a couple of factors with this which are interesting. The video was due to be released today, and Emmanuel announced that it would be released today. And so all the outside forces that might have come in to deal with it today were blunted by the fact that he actually, surprise, released it yesterday. I think that's good. I think that tactic was excellent, because those outside forces have no business being involved. But the whole thing, rather than having a precise moment of action, got spread out and dissipated over a day, which was healthy. Also, as for the black clergy, they've been given the Heisman for the last 13 months. They haven't had a chance to meet with Mayor Emmanuel. They've been told to go away again and again and again, and all of a sudden they got their meeting yesterday, the day before, and it was highly unsatisfactory, although they're happy, as any good Chicagoan is, that there were not riots. So they're on the yay camp, but at the same time, they were badly mistreated throughout.
All right, and Eric, obviously hoping for peaceful protests. We're going to continue to monitor that. But I want to go to the police union right now in Chicago. They are justifying the shooting. They say Laquan McDonald was behaving erratically. He refused officers' commands, and the officer feared for his life. There is the officer right there, Jason Van Dyke. And I want to know, does the videotape leave room for interpretation, Eric?
No, it really doesn't. Laquan McDonald was jogging down the road, but you can all see the video there. He is not. The police report after the fact said that McDonald was lunging at the officers, that he was threatening the officers. Anyone can see that's not true, and there is no mitigating factor here in terms of what this officer did. I mean, the police union says what the police union has to say, but there's no mitigating factor here. This is just an outright cold-blooded, shooting of this young man. Did not have to happen. And the outrage is genuinely placed, and it's also placed in, when you have a video like this in your hands the days after this event, and it takes more than a year, 400 days for them to act on this. That's a question that is, I think, really going to keep this issue roiling, even though the man has been charged and there's going to be a trial. He's going to get justice. But how can they wait on this for so long when they have evidence this powerful? It boggles the mind.
Congressman Flanagan, curious about some of your thoughts on the video.
I'll tell you, they said that Laquan had a 3-inch knife. That's the size of my index finger. That's slightly larger than a penknife. And to murder a young man over that, irrespective of his color, irrespective of the circumstances, I'll even give in that he gave a little mouth to the policeman. You don't forfeit your life for that, not even in Chicago. And this is outrageous, and this is insane. And I'll tell you what, somebody has to ask the harder question: why are 5 to 10 other policemen standing there watching this? Why is somebody not wrestling that policeman to the ground while he empties 16 rounds into a human being for carrying a tiny knife and having the temerity to walk away from a policeman? It's insane, and it must be stopped. This is a systemic problem. Chicagoans have always had a lot of leash for their police, but nobody has this much leash. And we got to look back into what's going on in the police department, that someone like this can do what they're doing, and other policemen can stand there and just watch it.
And help them make up the police reports afterwards to make it
exactly
to make it look like the event happened in a totally different way than it happened before. I really think that heads have to roll here. The state's attorney, who delayed for so long, is up for re-election. Her primary is coming up in March. I think she's going to have a real problem now getting reelected. I think that the superintendent of police has a lot to answer for, and he probably needs to go as well. This is a big deal here, and it really needs to be addressed.
Well, if this big deal gets bigger, too, Congressman Flanagan, is really going to be determined if many outsiders join in the protest. What's your take on what's going to happen in Chicago in the coming days?
Well, I hope outsiders stay outside. This is a family matter, this is an internal matter, and this is a matter Chicagoans are quite capable of handling. The fact that the black clergy is finally involved and should have been involved from the beginning and throughout is a healthy sign, and they are quite capable of helping the city heal from this. And if the mayor takes the proper action, shows McCarthy the door, and finds his way to not supporting the current Cook County State's Attorney for re-election, I think that's part of the process that's got to come.
All right, we're going to leave it right there.
We're going
to leave it right there, Congressman Flanagan. I appreciate it. Up next, the man who felt the full force of the United States judicial system and what it taught him about the Democratic Party.